So, I said step out of the line. The word cracked through the narrow jet bridge like a slap. Passengers freeze in place, a stalled human river between the gate and the airplane door. Rolling suitcases tilt. A child stops mid-lollipop. The humid press of bodies, the smell of recycled airport air and coffee, suddenly feels tighter. The old man at the center of it all doesn't move. He stands there in a dark blue suit, a simple leather duffel at his feet, boarding pass in his hand. His hair is silver and close-cropped, his skin the deep brown of someone who's lived many years under many suns. His eyes are clear behind frameless glasses. He looks at the boarding pass, then at the flight attendant glowering at him. He says, voice calm, even gentle, "You've scanned my ticket twice already." Passengers shift, sensing the storm. They turn, phones subtly angling forward. One young woman in an oversized hoodie has hairs already up and vertical, red recording light glowing. The flight attendant's name tag flashes as she moves, Cara. She steps closer, blocking the old man's way, her arms stretched across the jet bridge. Her perfectly neat bun doesn't move with her, but her jaw tightens. "And I'm telling you there's a problem," she says. "This boarding pass is clearly not yours." A murmur runs through the line. Eyes drop to the man's hands. Brown hands, veined and steady. He doesn't flinch. He glances at the boarding group printed on the pass, Group 1, First Class. He double-checked at the gate. Triple, even, old habits. "It has my name on it," he says. "August Langston. Seat 2A. Cara lets out a short, incredulous laugh that feels rehearsed for this exact moment. "Uh-huh, that's the name, sure. But I know the manifest for this flight, and there's no way," she cuts herself off, but the implication hangs there, heavy and sour. "You must have picked up the wrong ticket. Or someone gave you theirs." The young woman filming whispers under her breath, "Oh, we're really doing this today." Behind them, a man in a polo shirt huffs, "Some of us got to make connections, you know." Another voice, softer, "Just let him sit down." Cara's eyes flick to the line, then sharpen. "Everyone, please remain patient and in line," she says in her best customer service tone. "We have a security concern we need to address before we can continue boarding." Security. The word shifts the air. You can feel it, the collective exhale, then the holding of breath. The old man, August, tilts his head, just slightly, like he's hearing something distant. A gate agent appears at the far end of the jet bridge, confusion etched across her face. "Cara, is there an issue?" "Yes," Cara says, her voice now loud enough to carry back to the gate. "I have a passenger attempting to board first class with a fraudulent ticket. I need security down here." Phones rise higher. The girl in the hoodie whispers to her camera, "Gatekeeping first class in 4K, y'all. This better not end how I think it's gonna end." The gate agent frowns. "Fraudulent? Did the scanner show?" "It doesn't matter what it showed," Cara snaps, then forces her tone back into something smoother. "It's clearly not his. Look at him. He doesn't." She stops again, but everyone hears the missing words. "He doesn't look like he belongs." Something tightens in August's chest, an old familiar weight. He inhales once, slow, lets it out. "The ticket was issued to me by your airline," he says, still calm. "I checked in, cleared security, boarded with my group. I haven't changed seats with anyone." Cara flashes him a tight, brittle smile. "Well, maybe you should have stayed with your actual boarding group then," she says. "Economy is back there. This line is for first class and platinum members only." The girl with the phone sucks in a breath. Behind her, a teenager mutters, "No way, she just said that." "I am in the correct line," August replies. No shake, no quaver. His voice is almost soothing. "And I've already explained that to you." "And I've already explained that something's wrong with your ticket," Cara bites back. "So step out of the line before I have you removed." He doesn't move. People are fully watching now, some openly, some from the corners of their eyes. The hum of the airport feels very far away. "I'll wait here," August says. "We can speak with whoever you need to call." Cara's cheeks flush. Defiance flares. "You're not waiting here. You're holding up the entire plane. Stop being difficult and go sit at the gate." Security will talk to you there. The word difficult lands like a slap too. The gate agent shifts, uncomfortable, but she doesn't intervene. Not yet. That's the thing about institutional tones. It's never just one person. It's the air people breathe. August says quietly, I'm not being difficult. I'm standing where my ticket says I should stand. He's not raising his voice, but Kara does. Last warning, sir, she announces, almost triumphantly. Step out of the line or I'll have you denied boarding for non-compliance. You won't be flying today at all. The crowd reacts this time. Ripples of what and seriously, and that's too much. The girl in the hoodie whispers into her phone. He's literally just standing there. Ahead, past the open aircraft door, the faint clink and shuffle in the cabin has gone quiet. Another flight attendant peers around the corner. A glimpse of the cockpit door, slightly ajar. A shadow within. Someone near the front of the line says, I'm recording this, and a second voice responds, good. This is not okay. August's fingers curl a little tighter around the boarding pass. His eyes meet Cora's. There's something in his gaze now. Not fear, not anger. Something like measured disappointment. I've spent my entire life standing in lines I was told I didn't deserve to stand in, he says softly. What was that? Cora snaps. He straightens a little, old joints protesting but obeying. He looks beyond her, toward the cockpit, toward that half-open door and the silhouette just behind it. Nothing, he says. I suspect we'll resolve this shortly. Just then, the cockpit door opens wider. A tall man in a crisp uniform steps into view, hat tucked under his arm, full gold stripes gleaming on his shoulders. The captain's gaze sweeps the jet bridge, takes in the old man, the flushed flight attendant, the raised phones, the silent passengers. His eyes narrow as they land on August. And in that instant, before he says a single word, something in his face changes. Recognition, not the startled flicker of seeing a familiar stranger. The startled bow of seeing someone you've admired from afar. He steps forward, voice cutting through the heavy air. Is there a problem here? He asks. Kara turns, about to launch into her explanation. But the captain is already looking past her, straight at August Langston, as though seeing a headline come to life. And for the first time since this began, a sliver of real suspense slides into the space. Because whatever is about to happen next will not be what Kara expects. The alarm on the nightstand buzzed soft and insistent at 5:30 a.m. August Langston's eyes opened before his hand reached out to silence it. Age had turned sleep into a series of shallow ponds, easy to step out of. He lay there a moment, letting the room settle into focus. The dawn light was only just beginning, a thin gray promise behind the curtains. A city waking up beyond it. The faint rumble of trucks, the distant wail of a siren, a dog barking at nothing in particular. His knees protested as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. He sat there, bare feet against worn hardwood, and smiled despite the stiffness. Big day, Gus, he murmured to himself. The photo on the dresser smiled back. Her face was preserved at 55 in that frozen frame. Warm eyes, soft smile, a streak of silver in her locks. She'd tease him the day they took it, about how uncomfortable he looked in dress clothes. He was wearing a suit today, too. He wished she could see it. He crossed the room, picking up the picture frame. You'd say I'm overdressed for a plane, he told her. You'd say, Gus, it's just an A-plane seat, not the Supreme Court. He chuckled. The sound was thick with memory. But this wasn't just a trip. It was the first time he'd flown since the stroke. It had been mild, as strokes go. The neurologist had said that like it was a comfort, but all August heard was you got lucky this time. His left hand still shook a little if he tried to rush a signature. His fatigue came quicker. Words sometimes briefly scrambled on his tongue before lining back up. He'd spent a lifetime making words behave. For 35 years, he'd been a civil rights attorney, then a judge. He'd lived inside the architecture of language, laws and precedents, arguments and answers. His name had threaded through cases that made the news for a day or two, then slipped into law school textbooks for years. Langston versus City of Brookhaven. Langston et al. V. National Transit Authority. Headlines that had burned and faded. What lingered weren't the headlines. It was the faces. The young man in cuffs on a sidewalk at midnight. The mother in a courtroom clutching photos of her son. The worker laid off after speaking up. The passenger escorted off a plane while everyone stared at the carpet. He'd been in too many rooms where someone shrank under a gaze like the one he'd just met in the jet bridge. He set the frame back on the dresser, careful, almost ceremonious. On the chair sat his suit, navy blue, pressed the night before. White shirt, dark tie. The tie was his concession to the formality of the day. Most retirees he knew embraced elastic waistbands and golf shirts. He clung to pressed fabric and polished shoes. Not for status, for memory. His father had put on a suit to go clean offices at night, because that's what made him feel like a man who mattered. You give people a reason to treat you with respect, his father used to say, knotting his tie in the mirror. But even when they don't, you still know you deserve it. His father never lived to see his name on a courtroom door. August buttoned the shirt slowly, careful with the stiff fingers, and thought of him. Today's trip was supposed to be a celebration. The airline's corporate foundation had announced a new scholarship program for law students focused on civil rights and public interest law. Quietly, without fanfare, the board had voted to name the program after him, the August Langston Justice Scholars Fund. He got in the call 3 months ago from the airline's general counsel. "You've spent a career holding people like us accountable," she'd said with wry respect. "We thought the least we could do was help build the next generation of you." There'd been a ceremony scheduled in Washington, D.C. A room full of people in suits and dresses, glasses raised, polite applause. He tried to talk them out of too much fuss, but the CEO had insisted. "You've sued us twice," the man had laughed. "Both times we deserved it. It would be obscene not to shake your hand publicly at least once." They'd sent his ticket in an email that made the whole thing feel oddly impersonal. But then a handwritten note had arrived in his mailbox, the CEO's looping scrawl across thick paper. "First class, of course. Anything else would be a crime. Looking forward to meeting you in person, Judge Langston." James Rhodes, CEO. He'd rolled his eyes at the judge, but he understood. People like titles. He preferred Gus. His grandchildren, all 4 of them, were the only ones who called him that consistently now. He thought of them as he slid his well-worn leather wallet into his breast pocket. They lived in D.C. too. The ceremony was tomorrow. Tonight, he'd have dinner at his daughter's house, let the little ones crawl into his lap and ask him, again, whether he'd ever fought bad guys like in the movies. Never the way they show it in the movies, he always told them. Real life is quieter and slower, but just as important. He prayed silently that this trip would be as uneventful as any other, that his heart would behave, that his brain would keep firing its signals correctly. The doctor had cleared him but insisted on the wheelchair assist at the airport. "You've spent enough years rushing for everyone else," she'd said. "Let them push you for a change." He'd agreed only because long concourses tired him now. Pride wasn't worth stumbling. The rideshare dropped him curbside 2 hours before his flight. The sky over the city was a pale watercolor blue, streaked with contrails. Inside the terminal, the noise swallowed him. Rolling bags, crying children, the ding of departure boards changing their minds. The wheelchair attendant was a young man with kind eyes and hairy shoulders. "Morning, Mr. Langston," he said. "You ready to fly?" "As I'll ever be," August replied. They moved through security, threw shoes off and laptops out. He endured the pat-down, the extra wanding of his cane. He didn't complain. He'd long ago learned to save his words for bigger fights. At the gate, he thanked the attendant and tipped him more than the young man expected. The surprise and gratitude that followed warmed something in August's chest. He checked his ticket again out of habit. Flight 1836, Gate 27A, Seat 2A, First Class Boarding Group 1. He took a seat near the window, watching the plane being readied. Fuel truck, catering truck, luggage conveyor dots. A modern ritual. As boarding time approached, a gate agent called his name, mispronouncing it slightly. "Mr. Langstone." He rose and approached the podium, cane steady, boarding pass in hand. "Langston," he corrected gently. "Yes, that's me." The agent smiled, harried but polite. "Mr. Langston, We have you pre-boarded with Group 1, and the captain asked us to make sure you're comfortable. You're a special guest today." Her tone carried the subtle emphasis of someone told to be extra nice. He nodded, amused. "I appreciate that." She leaned closer. He also said. She lowered her voice, conspiratorial. "He said he's honored to have you on his flight. I think as a fan." "A fan?" August echoed, brows lifting. "He mentioned a documentary about one of your big cases." She smiled. "My brother's in law school. He sent me the link when he heard your name on the manifest. You're kind of famous, Mr. Langston." "Fame," he said lightly, "is a poor substitute for a quiet morning." She laughed, scanning his ticket. The scanner beeped green. "Enjoy your flight, sir." As he walked down the jet bridge, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor, he felt the familiar mixture of apprehension and gratitude that airports stirred in him. So many thresholds in one place. So many rules. So many eyes, deciding silently who belonged where. He straightened his shoulders. He'd spent a lifetime pushing those thresholds open for other people. He had no idea that in less than an hour, he'd be pushing one more. Not in a courtroom. Not in a chamber with wood-paneled walls. But in the narrow, fluorescent-lit throat of a jet bridge. With the world watching through the lens of 1,000 phones. "Is there a problem here?" The captain's voice is not loud, but it carries the way a gavel carries in a crowded room. Conversation frays and dies around him. Kara turns, relief flashing briefly across her face, her composure returning like a mask. "Captain Reed." "Yes. I've detained a passenger with a fraudulent first-class ticket. I've already called for security." The word detained makes August's lips press into a thin line. The captain's gaze moves to him, and something like awe flickers across his features. "Mr. Langston," he says. Kara blinks. "You know him?" The girl in the hoodie zooms in, whispering to her stream. Wait. The captain knows him." August inclines his head slightly. "Captain." Marcus Reed steps fully into the jet bridge now, close enough that August can see the nesting of fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the hint of gray at his temples. There's a steadiness to him born from thousands of hours in the sky. "I watched your keynote last year," Marcus says, almost under his breath. "The one at Howard, on structural bias in transportation. I almost didn't catch the flight home because I stayed in my hotel room to finish it." He exhales, something like a laugh in it. "It's an honor to have you on my aircraft, sir." Phones capture every syllable. Kara's face drains of color. "Your aircraft," she repeats faintly, as though she's only now remembering the hierarchy of metal bars on his shoulders. Marcus looks at her, finally, his expression cooling. "What's happening here?" he asks, tone shifting from civic warmth to professional steel. Kara wets her lips. She glances at the boarding pass still in August's hand, then at the line of watching passengers. I noticed a discrepancy with his ticket," she says, the rehearsed confidence faltering. "I scanned it and it must be some kind of glitch, because it shows as first class. But what?" Marcus asks quietly. The question hangs there, slicing the air. Kara's gaze flits around, looking for an ally. The gate agent at the top of the jet bridge has gone very still. I recognize our premium passenger lists." Kara rushes on, her words tumbling. "I know the profiles. This gentleman doesn't match the account information I remembered in." "You know the profiles," someone mutters behind them. "What does that even mean?" Marcus doesn't look away from her. "Our system confirmed his ticket." "Yes, but..." "And your response to a system-confirmed boarding pass was to accuse him of fraud and threaten to deny him boarding," Marcus says, voice flat now. "Based on what, exactly?" Kara swallows. Her throat bobs visibly. "I'm responsible for cabin security," she says, tripping over each word. "I can't just let anyone walk into first class if something doesn't feel right. We have procedures." "You do," Marcus agrees. "And none of them involve public humiliation of a passenger whose ticket scanned correctly." A murmur of assent ripples through the line. The man in the polo shirt, earlier impatient, now speaks up. "She told him he didn't belong up here," he says. "Said economy was his real group." Kara rounds on him. Sir, please stay out of. I'm already in it, he says, holding up his own phone. I got the whole thing. The girl in the hoodie flips her camera around to face herself, eyes wide. The captain is not playing, she whispers into the live stream. On screen, comments race up. Classic profiling, we see it every day. Drop the airline name, sis. Tag the CEO. Tag the board. Tag everybody. 2 rows back, an older white woman wrings her hands. This is terrible, she murmurs to her husband. He was so polite the whole time. Marcus takes a breath, his gaze returning to August. I'm very sorry, Mr. Langston, he says. You should never have been spoken to that way on my aircraft or in my company's name. He looks like he wants to say more, but there's protocol and there's the gaping lens of the internet and there's the ticking clock of departure times. August studies him, the tension in his shoulders, the tight grip on his hat. You didn't speak to me that way, August replies. But I appreciate your apology. Kara's composure fractures. Wait, hold on, she says. How was I supposed to know who he is? I was just doing my job. We're trained to spot. Marcus' head turns sharply. Trained to spot what? Kara. Silence. The only sound is the distant hum of the aircraft systems and the soft chime from the open door where another flight attendant is frozen in place, tray in hand. We're trained to look out for inconsistencies, Kara says finally, choosing her words like stepping stones over a flood. Tickets that don't match the person. People who don't fit the profile. August feels that last word like a physical thing. He could let it slide. He could simply allow the captain to handle it, board the plane, sit in 2A, lose himself in the clouds. But the phones are still up. The young woman's live stream is climbing in viewers every second. He can almost feel the virtual room beyond the jet bridge, thousands of unseen eyes watching. This isn't just about him. How do you define that profile? August asks quietly. His voice is still gentle, but there's a new undertone now, steel threaded through velvet. Kara blinks, flustered. I didn't mean it like that, sir. Just, our typical first-class travelers. The frequent flyers. The executives. The ones you're used to seeing. August finishes for her. Her mouth opens, closes. He looks at her for a long moment. There's no malice in his gaze, only a deep, weary sadness. I've spent my life listening to people explain what they didn't mean while they did real harm, he says softly. Intentions are invisible. Impact isn't. The words land heavier than any raised voice could have. Marcus clears his throat. Mr. Langston, he says, if you'd like, we can step aboard now. I'll personally make sure. With respect, Captain, August says, I think this conversation belongs right where it is. In this hallway, in front of these witnesses. He glances briefly at the raised phones. And in front of theirs, the girl in the hoodie's chat explodes. Who is this man? Flushed face is speaking facts calmly. I'm shaking. Not him dropping TED Talk bars in the jet bridge. Marcus nods slowly, understanding flickering in his eyes. Very well, he says. Kara's voice rises, shrill with desperation now. So what? I get crucified because I tried to protect the cabin. He could have been lying. People lie all the time. I'm supposed to just let anyone board first class Who what? Marcus presses, harsher now. Who doesn't look the way you think a first-class passenger should look? Kara flushes crimson. You're twisting my words. No, August says quietly. He's untwisting them. He straightens as much as his spine will allow. He looks around at the faces in the line. The girl with the hoodie, the man in the polo, the worried older couple, the young family with a toddler clinging to his mother's leg. He sees curiosity, anger, discomfort, shame. He also sees opportunity. Not for revenge. For clarity. Since my name is being questioned, he says, voice carrying clearly now, perhaps I should properly introduce myself. He shifts his cane, freeing his right hand. His fingers tremble just slightly, a subtle echo of the stroke. My name is August Langston, he says. I spent 35 years as a civil rights attorney and judge, focusing on systemic discrimination in transportation and housing. A flicker through the crowd, recognition in a few faces, confusion in others. I was lead counsel on Langston versus National Transit Authority, he continues. Some of you may have read about it. It was one of the first major cases to hold a national carrier accountable for discriminatory removal of passengers from flights. The man in the polo squints. Wait, that was you. My work has been used in policy reforms in several industries, August says, not boastful, just factual, including this one. After a particularly egregious incident, I reached a settlement with this airline. Part of that agreement included mandatory bias and de-escalation training for all customer-facing staff. His gaze returns to Kara. It's not cruel. It's steady. Training, he says quietly, that you apparently did not absorb. A startled, uncomfortable sound ripples through the watching line. Kara looks like she's been slapped. That's not fair, she whispers. Life rarely is, August says. Which is why those of us with power need to be careful how we use it. Marcus exhales slowly, almost in disbelief. I knew your name sounded familiar beyond the documentary, he says. Our internal training modules cite your cases. We've watched scenario videos based on your work. He looks around at his passengers, then at the phones. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, you are witnessing my airline failing the very standards we claim to uphold. The comment section on the live stream goes wild. Exposed by their own consultant Eyes Airline about to release the weakest notes apology. I'm saving this video BC, this is history. Kara stays at August as though he's suddenly grown 10 feet taller. You work for us, she says, dumbstruck. I do not work for you, August corrects. I held you accountable, and in a few hours, your CEO will be on a stage announcing a scholarship in my name to train future lawyers who will keep doing exactly that. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The jet bridge feels like it's shrinking around them, pulling every gaze, every breath, into a tightening circle. For a heartbeat, no one speaks. Even the plane seems quieter, the whir of its system stepping back to let the moment stand alone. Then, softly, from somewhere in the line, someone whistles. Damn, a man murmurs. She picked the wrong one today. Kara staggers back a step, bumping into the wall. Her hand brushes the safety placard. The fluorescent light above her flickers once, as if in judgment. I didn't know, she stammers. I didn't know who you were. I was just treating me differently because you thought I wasn't important enough for your courtesy, August finishes gently. That's the point. I shouldn't have to be anyone for you to treat me with basic dignity. Her mascara has started to smudge, twin shadows beneath her lower lashes. I'm not racist, she blurts, eyes shining. I swear I'm not. My best. Don't, Marcus says quietly. Don't finish that sentence. She bites her lip hard enough to whiten it. His voice, when he continues, is all captain now. Firm, controlled, non-negotiable. Kara, step aside from the boarding lane, he says. Her head jerks up. What? You're relieved of duty for this flight, he says. I'll be filing a full incident report with crew operations and HR. Given the company's consent decree obligations, this will go to the oversight board as well. She stares at him, eyes wide with shock. You can't do that. I must do that, he replies. For safety reasons. Safety. The word comes out high and disbelieving, edged with hurt. I'm the security risk now. Yes, Marcus says simply, because I can't trust your judgment with the lives and dignity of the people in my care. The phones tremble in people's hands. Some passengers exchange looks of astonished satisfaction. Others frown, uneasy with the swiftness of the consequence. The girl in the hoodie whispers, "Oh, he ended her. That's her whole career." August's stomach twists. He hadn't intended this. He'd wanted acknowledgement, accountability, change, not destruction. He watches Kara's face crumple, an entire career replaying behind her eyes. The training days, the late nights, the dragged luggage, the years of smiling through other people's bad behavior. She's done real harm here, yes. But she is also a product of a system that taught her she could trust her sense of who belonged more than the scanner in her hand. Kara, he says softly, She looks at him, wary, ashamed, angry, all tangled together. This isn't just about you, he says, but it does start with you. Her chin trembles. You're really okay with them firing me? She asks, raw. Just like that? You don't even know me. He studies her, the desperation in her eyes. I don't make hiring or firing decisions here, he says. But I do know this. You wield power every time you put on that uniform. Power that can make a person feel safe or humiliated, welcome or suspect. That power has to be questioned when it's misused. Her shoulders sag. He takes a breath, then says, I will speak to your CEO about what consequences are appropriate in light of your record and your ability to learn. But I will also speak about what happened here. That part is non-negotiable. She stays at him, speechless. Marcus nods slowly. Our policies require an immediate removal from duty in situations like this, he says. Beyond that, the investigation will decide. You're ruining my life, she whispers. No, August says, and his voice is suddenly harsher than before. You almost ruined mine. Not because you could stop me from flying to some ceremony. I'm old enough to miss a flight. But because you were willing to drag my name, my character, my dignity through mud in public based on nothing more than your discomfort with where I was standing. The words sink in. Her eyes well again. I'm sorry, she whispers. He nods once. It's not absolution. It's acknowledgement. I hope you mean that, he says. Up the jet bridge, two uniformed supervisors appear, alerted by the earlier call. They take in the scene quickly. The captain, the attendant with wet eyes, the old man in the suit, the raised phones. Kara, one of them says gently, come with us. She hesitates, then peels her back from the wall. As she walks past August, she stops. For a moment, the noise of the world seems to pull away. I really am sorry, she says again, more clearly now. He looks at her tired, tear-streaked face. So am I, he replies quietly. Sorry that no one taught you earlier how much damage a moment like this can do. She winces, then walks away with the supervisors, their voices low and tense. The line watches in stunned silence. The girl in the hoodie turns her phone toward herself again. Okay, fam, she whispers, eyes huge. I need someone to tell me his name again so we can tag him. As if in answer, Marcus speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, this is August Langston. Our company is honoring him tomorrow for his lifetime of work toward justice in transportation and public life. The words land like stones in a still lake, ripples moving through the crowd. The older woman brings her hand to her mouth. Oh, my God, she whispers. The man in the polo shakes his head slowly, chagrined. I almost told him to hurry up, he mutters. I'm such an idiot. The girl in the hoodie's chat starts spamming names. August Langston, I just Googled him, is legit legendary. Airline about to have the worst PR week, grimacing face. August grimaces slightly at the title. I'm just a man trying to get to his grandchildren, he says dryly. A ripple of warm laughter breaks some of the tension. He uses that small opening. Captain, he says, may I address the passengers before we continue boarding? Marcus hesitates for exactly half a second, then nods. Of course, sir. Phones rise higher. The world leans in. If you told August Langston 10 years ago that one of the most significant speeches of his life would be delivered in a cramped aluminum hallway on a shaky phone camera, he would have laughed. But as he stands there in the jet bridge, cane in one hand, boarding pass in the other, the faces in front of him blur at the edges. It's not nerves. It's the weight of what this moment can be. Thank you, he says quietly. I won't keep you long. Planes wait for no man, even old lawyers. A small chuckle. He takes a breath. What happened here, he says, isn't new. He lets that sit. It's not new for me, he continues. I've been told I don't belong in more rooms than I can count. I've had security called on me in courthouses where my name was engraved on the wall. I've had my credentials doubted in buildings where I helped write the rules. He looks down the line, making brief eye contact, anchor points in a sea of faces. I am not sharing this for sympathy, he says. I'm sharing it because I am, in many ways, as privileged as a black man in this country can be. I have degrees on my wall. I've sat on the bench. I have enough savings to buy a first-class ticket. And still, he gestures lightly at the space around them. Still, a stranger felt empowered to publicly question my right to stand here, to threaten my ability to travel, to label me a security risk. On what basis? He doesn't answer his own question. The silence does. Now, imagine, he says softly, what happens to the person who doesn't have my titles? My gray hair, my calm voice, the person who raises their voice in fear, the person who doesn't know how to say, I'd like to speak to your supervisor in just the right tone, the teenager, the person with a disability, the woman traveling alone. He feels his throat tighten. He clears it gently. When we allow our biases to go unexamined, he goes on, we build a world where some people walk through airports like they own them, and others move like they're always one misread glance away from being dragged off a plane. The memory of a viral video from years ago flickers through more than one mind. A few people nod, solemn. This company, he says, gesturing vaguely toward the plane, has made commitments on paper. They've written policies. They've signed agreements. That's good. But paper doesn't board planes. People do. He looks back toward where Kara disappeared. People like the woman you just saw walk away are not monsters, he says. They are mirrors. Mirrors of what their training emphasizes, of what their managers reward, of what their society whispers to them every day about who is a real customer, a safe passenger, a difficult person. He pauses, letting his words sink into the carpeting, the gray walls, the metal door frame. Accountability, he says, is not revenge. It's how we love our communities enough to make them safe. It's how we say, this behavior is not who we want to be, and we will not let it stand unchallenged. The girl in the hoodie is crying quietly now, phone still steady. The older woman dabs her eyes. The man in the polo looks at the floor, ashamed. Today, August continues, you all had a choice. You could have looked away. You could have said, not my business. Some of you maybe did it first. That's human. But some of you raised your phones. Some of you spoke up. Even if you only murmured, this doesn't feel right. That matters. He leans on his cane a bit more, his energy dipping, but his voice remains firm. Here's what I ask of you, he says. When you see something like this happen, anywhere, not just in a jet bridge, don't let the person on the receiving end stand alone. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to have a title. You just have to be willing to say, I saw what happened. I'm here. It's not okay. He smiles then, a small, wry thing. And if you happen to work for an airline that's honoring an old man tomorrow for his work on justice, he adds, maybe make sure your frontline staff know his name. But more importantly, know his work. A ripple of soft laughter, grateful for the release. Finally, he says, to those watching this on a screen somewhere, because I know you're out there, remember this. The person you most casually dismiss might be the one who wrote the rules you live under. Or they might be someone nobody knows who still deserves every ounce of your respect. He lifts his boarding pass slightly. I'm going to get on this plane now, he says. I'm going to see my grandchildren. Tomorrow, I'll stand on a stage with your CEO, and we'll say a lot of pretty words about justice and progress in the future. His gaze sharpens. What happened here is part of that future, he says. The question is whether we'll have the courage to do more than apologize for it. He falls silent. For a moment, the only sound is the faint hiss of the plane's air conditioning. Then, unexpectedly, the line of passengers begins to applaud. It's not thunderous. People are still self-conscious, phones still up, but it's real. Hands come together, slow at first, then stronger. Marcus stands a little straighter. Thank you, Mr. Langston, he says quietly. If you'll allow me, I'd be honored to escort you to your seat. August snorts softly. I've been walking down jet bridges by myself for 40 years, he says. But, today, I'll accept the gesture. They walk together toward the plane, an old man in a blue suit and a captain with squared shoulders. Phones track them. As they cross the threshold, August pauses and looks back at the passengers still in line. Be kind to each other, he says simply. but not at the cost of truth. Then he steps into the cabin. The video hits 1 million views before Flight 1836 lands. By the time the wheels touch down in Washington, the clip, titled some variation of "Flight Attendant accuses Black Elder of fraud, regrets it when she finds out who he is," has spread across platforms. The comments swarm. Some are what August expected: outrage, solidarity, calls for boycotts. Others are more complicated: airline employees fearful for their jobs, flight attendants recounting their own experiences, passengers sharing their own stories of being profiled. Within hours, the airline social media team issues a statement acknowledging an incident with a valued customer and promising a thorough investigation. It's the kind of bland corporate apology August has read 1,000 times. It doesn't land well. By that evening, traditional news outlets pick up the story. His condensed JetBridge speech appears in video packages. His phrases, "People don't have to be monsters to do harm," and "accountability is how we love our communities," quoted over B-roll of planes taxiing and passengers boarding. Someone digs up old footage of him arguing in front of an appellate court, younger and sharper, his voice still carrying that same measured fire. Stock analysts note a brief dip in the airline's share price as the hashtag trends. But the most consequential conversations happen far from public view. In a conference room on the 24th floor of the airline's headquarters, the CEO, James Rhodes, sits with his general counsel, the head of HR, and the chief diversity officer. The video plays on a muted screen. "That's our scholarship honoree," James says, rubbing his temples. "On our own JetBridge. Being treated like that. Hours before his. Supposed to stand next to me while I talk about our commitment to justice." The general counsel sighs. "We're in violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of the consent decree," she says. "At minimum, the oversight board will want to review our training protocols." "Training," James mutters. "We've poured money into training. Training is only as good as the culture that backs it up," the diversity officer says quietly. "If supervisors reward gut instincts without examining what shapes those instincts, we get this." HR shifts in her seat. "The flight attendant, Cara, is devastated," she says. "She's been with us 8 years. No previous incidents on record. Good performance reviews. Passengers love her. This is a blind spot that blew up in the worst possible way." "Blind spots still run people over," the diversity officer says. James looks out the window, where one of his planes is just visible, taxiing toward a runway that glows orange in the setting sun. "We have to do more than fire her and move on," he says finally. "That would be cowardly, and it wouldn't touch the route." There's a beat of silence. HR exhales, relieved at least that reflexive termination isn't the only card on the table. "But," he adds, "there are consequences." He turns back to them, eyes hard. "Immediate suspension without pay while we investigate. Mandatory intervention for her and her team. A full review of gate and cabin procedures for ticket verification. No more I know the profile's nonsense. And I want to report on whether our performance metrics incentivize this kind of gatekeeping." The general counsel nods. "The oversight board will want documentation of all of this," she says. "And we should involve Mr. Langston. He's not just a victim, hey. He's a stakeholder, given our scholarship program and past settlements." James grimaces. "Stakeholder," he repeats. "He's the reason we even have the language we pretend to live by." He looks at the paused video again, at August's face mid-speech, eyes steady, jaw set. "What did he say when he landed?" James asks. The general counsel glances at her notes. "He accepted your office's apology," she says. "He agreed to still appear at the ceremony. And he requested a private meeting beforehand to discuss, quote, how to make sure today isn't just fodder for your next press release." A few hours later, in a quieter, smaller conference room, James faces August directly. The old man looks tired. Travel always hits harder at his age. But there's a brightness in his eyes that hasn't dimmed. "I'm sorry," James says. "I'm deeply, personally sorry that this happened to you in my house." August tilts his head. "Airports belong to the public," he says. "But I understand the sentiment." James huffs a mirthless laugh. You know what I mean. Yes, August replies. I do. James leans forward. I'm going to ask you the question our PR team doesn't want me to ask, he says. What do you think should happen to our employee? August studies him. Do you want the answer that protects you legally, he asks, or the one that helps you grow a spine? James blinks, then laughs, surprised and slightly appalled. You haven't changed, he says. Stroke took my left hand's steadiness, August says. It did not touch my tongue. James sobers. The floor is yours, he says. August taps his cane gently against the carpet, thinking. I don't believe in throwing people away, he says. I believe in throwing away behaviors, policies, incentives that harm people. Your attendant should not be allowed to continue as though nothing happened. That would be unjust. James nods slowly. But if you fire her and call it a day, August continues, you'll send 2 messages. 1, to her colleagues, that they better hope nobody films them in their worst moment. And 2, to the public, that you think justice is satisfied by sacrificing a single employee on the altar of bad press. That's not enough, James agrees quietly. August's gaze is sharp. You're an airline, he says. You know something about turbulence. Structural, systematic change. That's turbulence. You can't just fly above it. He leans back. Here's my proposal, he says. Suspend her. Investigate, thoroughly, including feedback from colleagues and passengers on her overall behavior. Require a program for her that doesn't just check a box, something that forces her to sit with the impact of what she did. James frowns. Like what? Bring in people who've been on the receiving end of profiling, August says. Have her listen. Have her watch footage. Have her face the discomfort of realizing she is not the hero of every story. And don't do it alone. Make it mandatory for everyone from gate agents to senior leadership. He pauses. Then, he says, change the structures that made her think she was protecting you by policing who looked first class. Stop selling status as a personality trait. Stop training your staff to see your most profitable customers as a specific demographic instead of a seat number. James scribbles notes furiously. And what about the oversight board? He asks. They'll want blood, August says. That's their job. Tell them you're giving them muscle instead. James looks up, confusion flickering. More oversight power, August clarifies. More transparency. Let them audit your training. Give them a seat at the table when you design new policies. Show them this incident is a turning point, not a speed bump. James exhales. You're asking me to invite more scrutiny. You invited it the moment you took government money after your last crisis, August says bluntly. You can either pretend you didn't, or you can decide to be the kind of leader who uses that spotlight to actually fix something. James looks at him for a long moment. You could ruin us if you wanted, he says quietly. With one press conference, one op-ed, you could frame this in a way that would take us years to recover from. August shrugs, tiredly. I'm too old to spend my remaining years relitigating the same case in the court of public opinion, he says. I'd rather see real change before I'm in the ground. He meets James' gaze. But, he adds, tone sharpening, if you turn this into a feel-good story about how you listened and learned without changing a damn thing, I will use every platform I have to hold you to account. James nods, slowly, solemnly. That's fair, he says. The next morning, at the scholarship ceremony, James stands at the podium and does something unusual for a CEO. He admits, on camera, that his airline failed a customer in a way that goes beyond bad customer service. He uses the word bias without flinching. He mentions the incident not as a footnote but as a central example of why the scholarship exists. We are not honoring Mr. Langston because we've solved these problems, he says. We're honoring him because we have not. He announces new measures, expanded oversight, redesigned training, transparent reporting of bias-related complaints. He does not mention Cora by name, but everyone watching knows the consequences are real. Her suspension becomes official. An internal investigation confirms what HR suspected. No prior complaints, no pattern of overt misconduct. But interviews reveal subtle patterns, words she used, assumptions she made, that went unchallenged until his. At the end of the process, The airline offers her a choice: termination with severance or reassignment after completing a rigorous, months-long restorative program, including facilitated dialogues, education, and a probationary period in a non-customer-facing role. It is not an easy path. It is, for many, more than she deserves. For others, it is not enough. For Kara, it feels like the end of everything she knew. But not, perhaps, of everything she could become. Spring comes late to the city. On a mild afternoon 5 months after the jet bridge incident, the conference room at a downtown community center hums with a quieter energy than any airport, but the stakes feel just as high. On the wall, a banner reads, Langston Justice Scholar Speaker Series. Below it, rows of folding chairs are filled with law students, community organizers, transportation workers, and a smattering of airline employees in plain clothes. At the front, in a simple chair, sits August. He's thinner now. The months have etched deeper lines into his face. But his eyes are still bright, his suit still neat. He holds a stack of index cards he never looks at. So when we talk about systemic change, he's saying, we're really asking, what happens when no one is filming? When there's no viral clip? What do we do then? A few heads nod. Pens scratch on notepads. In the second row, the girl in the hoodie sits up straight, now wearing a lanyard that marks her as a media intern. After the video of that day exploded, she'd found herself with unexpected visibility. Instead of just chasing clout, she'd used it to talk about structural issues, not just individual villains. Her followers dropped. The ones who stayed mattered more. Near the back of the room, half hidden by a pillar, someone else listens, hands knotted in her lap. Kara. Her hair is down today, softer. She's out of uniform, dressed in a simple blouse and slacks. Months of workshops and therapy sessions and difficult conversations have left their own marks, layers of exhaustion and new understanding. She almost didn't come. The email invitation had felt like a test she wasn't sure she wanted to take. You are welcome to attend in your personal capacity, the diversity officer had written. No cameras, just listening. But she'd come. She owed him that much. I'm often asked, August says, if I'm hopeful. A ripple of quiet laughter. They've heard the question too. I am not optimistic by nature, he admits. But I am stubborn. Hope, to me, is not a feeling. It's a discipline. It's choosing to believe that people can do better and then structuring your life around making it harder for them not to. He sets the cards aside and leans forward. Change doesn't always look like dramatic moments in jet bridges, he says. Sometimes it looks like a supervisor quietly telling a new hire, we don't do that, hey. Sometimes it looks like an HR policy that doesn't let complaints die in a folder. Sometimes it looks like a young person deciding to go to law school instead of shrugging and saying, that's just how it is. He smiles, small and real. Sometimes it looks like an airline admitting, on record, that they failed, and then inviting their harshest critic into the room where they decide what happens next. He doesn't say that he now sits on a formal advisory council for the airline, that he reviews training materials, meets with executives, listens to flight attendants who are terrified of being the next viral villain and teaches them how to avoid becoming one. But the work shows in other ways. Complaint statistics have shifted, fewer incidents, more reports handled transparently. Flyers from marginalized communities share stories of staff who intervened against profiling, not in its service. The changes aren't perfect, but they are real. Restorative justice, he says now, is messy. It doesn't satisfy everyone. It doesn't feel as clean as punishment. But punishment alone doesn't teach us how to be better neighbors. It just teaches us how to be better at hiding our worst parts. At the back of the room, Kara swallows hard. She thinks of the session she attended where people like him told their stories, where she had to sit with the realization that her instincts were built on a lifetime of cultural messages about who belongs where. She remembers the night she almost quit, sat on her bathroom floor, phone in hand, finger hovering over the email that would have ended her career for good. She didn't send it. Instead, she showed up, again and again, listened, apologized, not for the cameras, but in rooms that would never see a like or a share. Now, for the first time, she's seeing him in person since that day. She doesn't know if he knows she's here. She isn't sure whether she wants him to. Well, I'm 71 years old, August says. I don't have time for empty gestures. I want to see systems change while I can still board a plane under my own power. A soft murmur of appreciation. He pauses, looking out over the room. His gaze moves, row by row. It brushes the girl in the hoodie, who grins and lifts a hand in a small wave. It passes over airline employees scribbling notes. It reaches the back of the room. It finds her. There's a moment of shock in his eyes. Recognition. Then something else. He hesitates for a fraction of a second. Then he smiles, faint but unmistakable. And I have seen enough in these past months, he continues, to say this. People can change. Institutions can, too. Slowly. With effort. With discomfort. With accountability. He looks toward her again, just for an instant. Some of the people who have failed us the worst, he says, can become, if they are willing to do the work, some of the strongest advocates for doing better, because they know, intimately, what harm feels like from the inside out. She feels her throat close. After the talk, people cluster around him. Students with questions, staff with thanks, organizers with flyers. The girl in the hoodie waits her turn, then hugs him carefully, mindful of his balance. You changed my whole content strategy, she laughs tearfully. I'm trying to make videos that actually teach people something. Good, he says. The world has enough outrage. It needs more wisdom. Eventually, the room thins. Kara considers slipping out. She could leave now, unnoticed. Carry the words with her. Let them work their way through her life. She almost does. But then she remembers his face in the jet bridge, the quiet gravity of his disappointment. The line, "I'm sorry no one taught you earlier how much damage a moment like this can do." She takes a breath and walks forward. He's gathering his papers when she approaches. His cane rests against the chair. "Mr. Langston," she says quietly. He turns, squinting slightly. For a second, confusion. Then understanding. "Oh," he says, not unkindly. "Hello." Her hands tremble. I can leave, if you'd prefer," she blurts. "I just wanted to. I don't know. Say something. Say thank you. And I'm sorry." Again. He studies her face. The streaks of exhaustion beneath her eyes. The softness that wasn't there before. "How have you been?" he asks. She lets out a shaky laugh. "Honestly," she says, "like someone took my whole world apart and put it back together wrong, and I'm still learning how to move in it." He nods thoughtfully. "That's what growth feels like," he says. "Uncomfortable. Awkward. Like learning to walk again after an injury." "I lost my wings," she says, voice breaking. "I mean, technically I could get them back if I make it through all my probation and everything. But even if I do, I'll never see that uniform the same way." "Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing," he replies. "Uniforms can make us forget we're just people, too." She swallows. "I watched your video 100 times. She confesses. "At first, I hated you for it. I thought you'd ruin my life. Then I started listening, really listening. To you, to the people in those workshops, to my own coworkers who'd been on the other side of profiling." She meets his gaze. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she says. "But I wanted you to know that what you did in that hallway changed me. Not because you got me punished. Because you made it impossible for me to lie to myself anymore about who gets hurt when I follow my feelings instead of the facts in front of me." He's quiet for a long moment. "Forgiveness," he says eventually, "is a complicated word. People imagine it as this grand, cinematic moment. In my experience, it's smaller. It's choices. It's deciding not to reduce someone to their worst act." He considers her. "I don't know yet if I forgive you," he says, and she flinches, but he continues. "But I believe you're doing the work. That matters a great deal more to me than whether I can wrap this in a tidy bow." Tears spill over despite her attempts to blink them back. "Thank you," she whispers, "for being honest." He smiles, and there's something almost mischievous in it. "Besides," he says, "if I went around fully forgiving everyone who ever tried to keep me out of a room, I'd have no edge left. And an old lawyer needs his edge." She laughs through her tears. He sobers. But I will say this, he adds. When you stand at a doorway again, any doorway, remember how this felt. Remember the heat in your face when you realized you'd been wrong. Let that memory slow you down. Make you ask questions before you act. She nods quickly. I will, she says. I promise. He taps his cane lightly against the floor, signaling the end of the conversation as much as to steady himself. Then, he says, you're already doing more than many ever do. She hesitates. If you ever fly with us again, she says, and if I ever make it back into the cabin, I hope I can greet you properly. He chuckles. I hope we never recognize each other, he says, because that will mean you've treated everyone with enough dignity that an old man in a suit doesn't stand out. She thinks about that for a moment, then nods. Safe travels, Mr. Langston, she says softly. You too, Cora, he replies. As she leaves, the girl in the hoodie catches a glimpse of them together, feels a story there, but for once doesn't reach for her phone. Some moments don't belong on camera. They belong in the quiet architecture of changed hearts. Weeks later, the video from that day in the jet bridge still floats around the internet. People share it when another incident pops up, when another story breaks, when they need a reminder that calm truth can cut deeper than rage. Clips of his speech play under montages about accountability and bias. His quotes appear on posters in law school hallways and in slideshows in corporate training rooms. Life goes on. People rush for flights, complain about delays, cram bags into overhead bins. And somewhere, an old man in a Navy suit still boards planes, cane tapping, eyes watchful but not bitter. He knows the system is still flawed. He also knows it's more honest today than it was the morning he stepped onto Flight 1836. He did not set out to end a woman's career. He set out to draw a line, to say, hey, in this narrow hallway between welcome aboard and your problem, we will tell the truth about what we see and what we do. The rest, the consequences, the policies, the think pieces, that's up to all of us. So now it's your turn to stand in that hallway for a moment, even if only in your mind. Ask yourself, if you had been in that line, phone in your hand, boarding pass in your pocket, what would you have done when you heard, you don't belong up here? Would you have looked away, laughed it off, filmed and walked on? Or would you have taken one small, uncomfortable step toward the person being humiliated and said, quietly but clearly, I see what's happening. It's not okay, and you don't have to stand here alone. The next time you find yourself at a doorway, literal or metaphorical, who will you decide belongs on the other side? And when your reflex whispers otherwise, will you listen to it? Or will you listen to the better part of you, the one that knows dignity isn't a boarding group, a seat assignment, or a status level? It's a decision, made in 100 small moments, about how you treat the person in front of you right now. That answer won't go viral. No one may ever film it, but it will shape the world you live in. So, honestly, what will you do when it's your turn in the jet bridge?